The European Central Bank cuts interest rates for the 8th time in a year to 2%. Canada trade deficit in April widens to an all-time high of a whopping 7.1 billion Canadian dollars. And the International Energy Agency reports a surge in global energy investment to $3.3 trillion in 2025. Good evening and welcome to our economic bulletin. We start off with the European Central Bank, who has cut interest rates for the 8th time in a year from 2.25% to 2%, acknowledging inflation was under control and turning more pessimistic about the Eurozone's economic prospects amid risks over a trade war with the United States. ECB President Christine Lagarde told a press conference that at the current level, the bank is in a good position to navigate the uncertain circumstances that will be coming up. She added that the rate cut decision was almost unanimous. Lagarde also emphasized that U.S. tariffs will impact predominantly on 2026 growth and be offset by European military spending.
In more details how we see the economy and inflation developing, and will then explain.
The European Commission has given Bulgaria the go-ahead to adopt the euro currency from the start of 2026, making Bulgaria the 21st country to join the single currency area. Economic Commissioner Valdis Dombrovskis said in a press conference that the report is a historic moment for Bulgaria, the euro area and the European Union as a whole. The Commission also looked at whether Bulgaria's economy and markets are integrated with the rest of the EU, as well as the trends in the country's balance of payments.
It's a tangible symbol of European unity and the peace and prosperity that our European project continues to deliver. For Bulgaria, the euro will bring a tangible...
A Bank of England survey has revealed that few British businesses now expect to be directly affected by recent changes in US trade policy, with only 12% naming it as one of their top 3 sources of uncertainty, down from 22% a month earlier. The Bank of England said that 70% of businesses surveyed in May as part of its monthly decision-maker panel expected that US tariffs would have no impact on their sales, prices or investment plans. It highlighted that 22% expected sales to fall over the year ahead. 20% said they would invest less, 15% expected to lower prices, and 7% expected to raise prices as a result of changes in US trade rules. TASS, the Russian news agency, has reported that Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova stated that the United States is the United Nations' largest debtor, with its outstanding dues now exceeding $3 billion. Her remarks came in response to US entrepreneur Elon Musk's call to halt funding for the UN. She added that when a leading businessman and former American establishment insider calls for defunding the UN, it's notable because, according to official data, the US is currently the UN's largest debtor, owing over $2 billion as of January 2025.
Заслуги перед Отечеством, кто своим трудом доказал уровень профессионализма, он их так называет бутафорией, использует слово бутафорный, клоун, неудачник, человек вообще с неизвестным образованием в отношении людей, у которых есть не просто базовое образование, ученые степени, заслуги перед Отечеством, кто своим трудом доказал уровень профессионализма, он их так называет бутафорией, использует слово бутафорный, клоун, неудачник, человек вообще с неизвестным
Now, here's a meeting that we've been waiting for all week. US President Donald Trump is welcoming the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. Will it be another one of those Oval Office press conferences that go a little bit wrong? Let's see.
Back there, please. Mr. President? Okay.
Is Germany doing enough on defense, Mr. President? Is Germany doing enough on defense?
What?
Defense spending.
Is Germany doing enough on defense?
The Chancellor wants to.
Is Germany doing enough on
Chancellor wants to
defense?
spend 3.5.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I haven't discussed it very much. I know that you're spending more money on defense now, and quite a bit more money, and that's a positive thing. I'm not sure that General MacArthur would have said it's positive, you know. He wouldn't like it, but I sort of think it's good. You understand what I mean by that?
I understand.
He made a statement, never let Germany rearm. And I said, I always think about that when he says, sir, we're spending more money on defense. I say, oh, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I think it's a good thing. But, you know, at least to a certain point. There'll be a point when I'll say, please don't arm anymore, if you don't mind. We'll be watching him. I'll get it.
Mr. President.
On Biden, Mr. President.
Yeah, Biden, you said Biden.
Your predecessor dismissed your auto pen investigation. He said he made all the decisions during his presidency. I'm curious your reaction to his dismissal.
Well, look, the auto pen, I think, is the big scandal. Outside of the rigged election of 2020, I think the biggest scandal of the last many years is the auto pen. And who's using it? I happen to think I know, because I'm here, and I'm not a big auto pen person, fortunately. I'm glad. I'm very glad. It's an easy way out. But it's a very bad thing, very dangerous. You know, I sign important documents. Usually when they put documents in front of you, they're important. Even if you're signing ambassadorships, and I consider that important. I think it's inappropriate. You have somebody that's devoting 4 years of their life or more to being an ambassador. I think you really that person deserves to get a real signature, not an auto pen signature. And I can tell auto pen easily. I can look at it. Like two little pinholes from pulling the paper, right? You always see the pinholes. Yeah. It's real easy to tell about auto pen. I think it's very disrespectful to people when they get an auto pen signature. Outside, auto pen to me are used when thousands of letters come in from young people all over the country and you want to get them back. And, you know, people use auto pens for that, to send a little signature at the bottom of a letter. We have thousands of them. We get thousands of letters a week. And it's not possible to, you know, do. I'd like to do it myself, but you can't do it. To me, that's where auto pens start and stop. But I'm sure that he didn't know many of the things. Look, he was never for open borders. He was never for transgender for everybody. He was never for men playing in women's sports. I mean, he changed, all of these things that changed so radically. I don't think he had any idea that what was, frankly, I said it during the debate and I say it now, he didn't have much of an idea what was going on.
Mr. President.
You shouldn't be, I mean, essentially whoever used the auto pen was the president. And that is wrong, it's illegal, it's so bad, and it's so disrespectful to our country.
Mr. President.
Mr. President, will you lead your troops in Germany? And if I may ask a question to the Chancellor to answer in German for the German audience, how has your first encounter been?
The answer is yes. We'll talk about that. But if they'd like to have them there, yeah, we have a lot of them, about 45,000. It's a lot of troops. It's a city when you think of it. That's good economic development. They're high troops and they spend a lot of money in Germany. But the relationship with Germany is very important. Yeah, we'll be doing that. No problem.
May I say a few words in German to
Yes,
the German
please.
public? So, danke für die Frage. Wir sind hier im Weißen Haus und ich bedanke mich beim Präsidenten für den sehr freundlichen Empfang im Oval Office in diesem weltweit bekannten Raum. Ich freue mich sehr, hier zu sein und wir bereiten eine Vertiefung unserer Zusammenarbeit vor. Ich freue mich sehr darüber.
Mr. President, you've made
Mr. President.
Do you speak English because you speak such good English? Is it as good as your German, would you say? Do you feel, do you feel
it's
more
not my
comfortable?
mother tongue. No, it's not my mother tongue, but I try to understand almost everything and
very
to
good.
speak as good as I can.
Very good. You know,
Mr. President, you've made
it's an achievement, actually.
Mr. President, can I follow up on the auto pen?
Thank you, Mr. President. The criticism that I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen regarding Elon Musk and your big, beautiful bill, what's your reaction to that? Do you think it in any way hurts passage in the Senate, which, of course, what is you're seeking?
Well, look, you know, I've always liked Elon, and it's always very surprised. You saw the words he had for me, the words of, and he hasn't said anything about me that's bad. Rather have him criticize me than the bill, because the bill is incredible. It's the biggest cut in the history of our country. We've never cut. It's about 1.6 trillion in cuts. It's the biggest tax cut. You would say, people's taxes will go way down, but it's the biggest tax cut in history. It's we are doing things in that bill that are unbelievable. And when you look at what we're doing for small businesses, for people, for middle-income people, all of the things that we're doing, nobody's ever seen anything like it. And, you know, Elon's upset because we took the EV mandate, and, you know, which was a lot of money for electric vehicles, and, you know, having a hard time, the electric vehicles. And they want us to pay billions of dollars in subsidy. And, you know, Elon knew this from the beginning. He knew it for a long time ago. That's been in there. That's been, I would say, JD, that hasn't changed. That's been right from the beginning, I think, Mr. Secretary, that hasn't changed at all, right from the beginning. But I know that it disturbed him. He wanted, and rightfully, you know, he recommended somebody from that he, I guess, knew very well. I'm sure he respected him, but to run NASA, and I didn't think it was appropriate. And he happened to be a Democrat, like Democrat, and I say, you know, look, we won. We get certain privileges. One of the privileges, we don't have to appoint a Democrat. NASA is very important. Great people. General Kane is going to be picking somebody with our. We'll be checking him out, seeing. But he wanted that person, a certain person, and we said no. And you know, I can understand why he's upset. Remember, he was here for a long time. You saw a man who was very happy when he stood behind the Oval desk, and even with the black eye, I said, "Do you want a little makeup? We'll get you a little makeup." But he said, "No, I don't think so," which is interesting and very nice. He wants to be who he is, so you could make that statement too, I guess. Look, Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we're well anymore. I was surprised because you were here. Everybody in this room practically was here as we had a wonderful send-off. He said wonderful things about me. You couldn't have nicer. Said the best things. He's worn the hat. Trump was right about everything. And I am right about the great, big, beautiful bill. We call it a great, big, beautiful bill because that's what it is. And again, biggest tax cuts in history, biggest economic development moves anywhere. We've never done anything like it. Business is spurred. And I don't know if you've seen the numbers, but the numbers came out. Even the CBO, which is run by Democrats, said that we're going to be doing, you know, I'd like you to discuss it, the 2.8 trillion that CBO, this is a group of people that are Democrats. They're very hostile to us. They just came out with phenomenal numbers, what it does. You want to mention that, Scott?
Yes, sir. So what we've seen is we keep hearing from the CBO that there's going to be a large deficit from the bill, which we disagree with, but using the CBO scoring, they came out and scored the tariff revenue. We think it'll be the minimum of $2.8 trillion over the 10-year window, which actually puts the bill in surplus if you include the tariff revenue, which they won't do.
It gives you a tremendous surplus, but we're not allowed to use that. For some reason, they say scoring. Nobody knows what scoring means. Maybe a couple of people, but nobody. Somebody sits in the background. They say, well, we're not going to allow that. They're not allowing other things that we have that are tremendously profitable for our country. But if you saw the other day, CNBC, they came out with numbers, and the people on the show, very good people, I've watched them for a long time, they couldn't believe the numbers, how good they are. The numbers were incredible, and that was personal income and also very low inflation. We have very low inflation. We're down to 2% now, and maybe even lower than that. And when I took it over, it was a mess. Remember, we had the worst inflation probably in the history of our country. They say 48 years, but let's say I think it's worse than that. So we had the worst inflation in the history of our country under the Biden administration. Now we're down to a beautiful number, 2%. You'd actually like to keep it there. Better than 0 is 2%. It's going down maybe to 1, and 1% is like perfect. That's perfect. You don't want to have 0 for certain reasons that nobody is very interested to listen to. But we have almost perfect inflation. Grocery prices are down. Everything. Remember eggs? Eggs. We weren't going to buy another egg. It was so expensive, right? Remember? You guys all hit me about eggs. Eggs have come down 400%. Everybody has eggs now. They're having eggs for breakfast again. But if you look at gasoline, very important. I think always the most important because it's the energy is the biggest factor. That's what happened. He screwed up our energy policy, and everything went up because energy went up. But now energy is way down, and they have states where you're at $1.98 a gallon for gasoline. So the costs have come way down.
So that's Donald Trump there. A familiar scene now that we're used to seeing where Donald Trump welcomes a foreign leader to the White House and they sit next to him looking slightly awkward whilst he talks about the most random of things that he gets asked about. So some of the things covered there, mainly it wasn't about the German leader Friedrich Merz, who is the new Chancellor of Germany on his first visit to Washington. He was asked about troops in Germany. He said, yes, we'll keep them there if he wants them. He was asked about German defense spending and made some jokes about World War II, which I'm sure are going to make some headlines. He was asked about launching an investigation to Joe Biden, and he talked for a while about the auto pen. But I think the main takeaway from that was the relationship between Donald Trump and Elon Musk, which has taken a turn for the worst over the last few days. Elon Musk, since leaving the White House and being sainted by Trump only a few days ago, has called Trump's big, beautiful bill an abomination. And Trump said about this, he said, well, he hasn't said anything bad about me. I wish he would, rather than criticize the bill. And then he talked about offering Elon makeup to cover up his black eye at some point. And then he did say that he had a great relationship with Elon, but he's not sure if he will in the future. And then, of course, he's now going to go to a meeting with the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. And if there are any more developments from this particular news conference, then we will let you know. Now, a little while ago on our economic bulletin, we were talking about the European economy. We're going to come to our guest now, who is from West Dennis in Massachusetts, Justin Russell, who is the Executive Director of the Global Foreign Policy Center. Before we get on to the European news, just to come to what Trump was talking about and his big, beautiful bill, how difficult for Trump is this attack by Elon Musk?
Well, I don't know how to follow that what we just saw, Mark. So thanks for having me. It's there's so much to unravel from his comments in this. Obviously, Elon Musk is looking at this from a business standpoint, and Elon Musk isn't wrong. You take away the green energy aspect, you take away the tax credits for electric vehicles. Guess what Tesla is? It's an electric vehicle. Guess what they need? Batteries. He has a battery manufacturing capability. This hits Elon Musk in the most important place in his pocketbook. So Donald Trump's comments obviously is going to be, this is now a battle of personalities. Who is going to drive senators in the Senate, Republican senators in the Senate, to either back Elon Musk and the economic power that he has, or the cult of personality that is Donald Trump. Two very completely different dynamics that are going to have major implications in the midterms in 2026.
Okay, well, we could talk all day about that particular meeting, and it's still going on now. We'll have to see what happens with the rest of the meeting, or whether Friedrich Merz will be allowed to speak at any point. But let's go back to what we were going to discuss. And we were talking about the ECB earlier on. What do you think were the main factors that led the ECB Governing Council to lower its interest rates by 25 basis points?
Well, it's hard to interpret. The way I look at what happened earlier with the announcement by Christine Lagarde is that the ECB and the EU is basically telling the US that they can go pound salt, that they don't need them. If you listen to the comments by Christine Lagarde, she says that the reason why they're doing it, and again, this was a almost unanimous decision, is one of the factors is that inflation dropped below target rates, which is a big deal for them. And she's also focusing on the fact that growth in spending, not just in defense, because everybody's focusing on the defense. She said something very interesting. It's also an infrastructure, which leads me to believe two things. This is bad for the United States and the Trump administration. It's good for the EU because if they are going to increase spending on, if they're cutting lending rates and they're going to increase spending in defense, that means that money is going to go to companies like Airbus. It's going to go to BAE, Rheinmetall, Da Vinci, etc. Those companies are going to benefit. Those companies are going to create jobs, and they're going to keep that money circulating in the European Union. The problem is that money won't go, in some instances. There will be some buying power of this, but it won't have the effect. It does not all go to companies like Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin. That's a big deal because those are American jobs and American money. That's a key point that we have to look more deeply at. They're trying to become insular. The the EU is starting to look at how do we secure our internal buying power without this huge reliance on the U.S.
And how do you think like global trade tensions and also the U.S. tariffs might impact or affect the effectiveness of the ECB's rate cuts in supporting the euro area?
Well, if you listen to Chairwoman Lagarde says, look, it's not. You know, you're talking about an impact that's going to happen basically 6 to 11 months from now in 2026. They're basically saying, look, it's not going to be that big of a deal. If you read between the lines, what Christine Lagarde is saying is like, look, the tariffs, we don't have to buy stuff up from the U.S. It doesn't have to be our big trading partner. We can buy steel from South Korea. We can buy steel from Brazil. We can buy from Mexico, Canada, aluminum from Canada. We do not have to rely on this, you know, this umbilical cord of trade between the U.S. and the EU. And that is a key point that we have to look at. And that's why I think that Christine Lagarde said, look, we're in a good place, which means that they are confident that the ECB and the EU economic internal buying power is solid enough to say, you know what, we don't need you. We're not going to be concerned about any tariff wars or anything like that. You want to do a tariff war, Donald Trump? We'll keep it in-house. Go right ahead.
Okay. Well, we also heard earlier on about Bulgaria and its planned adoption of the euro in January next year. Do you think it's a good move for Bulgaria, and how significant is it for the Eurozone and the EU as a whole?
For the European Central Bank, for the EU, for the euro, it's a good thing. Any country that comes into and uses it as its standard baseline currency helps bring in another economy to help stabilize and help promote growth and add to that economic growth. So for the ECB and the euro, it's good. The question is that you ask is it good for Bulgaria? That has yet to be seen. Today, I think it's a good thing for Bulgaria. What it does is it gives Bulgaria the stability to integrate into these rate cuts, to integrate into the buying power of the EU. Now, again, a year ago when this first started coming into fruition, Bulgarians largely were in favor of it. 75% of Bulgarians approved of the idea of joining the European Central Bank and having the euro as its form of currency. Polls as recent as last week say that has dropped significantly to about 55%. A majority still, but not as solid as it was a year ago. What that leads me to believe is that there's still concern inside Bulgaria of the financial stability of the EU, and is the EU strong enough to stand on its own without the reliance on North American partners such as Canada, Mexico, and the U.S.?
Well, thank you very much for joining us here on the program. Executive Director of the Global Foreign Policy Center, Justin Russell, joining us there. Thank you very much indeed. Now, Statistics Canada data has shown that the trade deficit in April widened to an all-time high of a whopping 7.1 billion Canadian dollars, as tariffs imposed by Trump sucked out demand for Canadian goods from the United States. StatsCan reported that exports to the United States shrank by 15.7%, adding that exports south of the border have fallen by over 26%. Imports were down 3.5% in April to 67.58 billion Canadian dollars, and StatsCan also made a big revision to the trade deficit recorded in March to 2.3 billion Canadian dollars from 506 million Canadian dollars. It noted that total exports in April plunged by 10.8% to 60.4 billion Canadian dollars, the lowest level seen in almost 2 years. Now, the Saudi General Authority for Statistics has revealed that this year's Hajj pilgrimage saw a total of 1,673,230 pilgrims. Of these, just over 1.5 million arrived from abroad, representing 171 different nationalities, while 166,654 pilgrims were from within Saudi Arabia.
Religious tourism is a powerful driver of economic growth and social development worldwide, contributing significantly to national and regional GDPs. Globally, the religious tourism market forecasts projected to reach $1.38 trillion in 2025 and is expected to grow to over $2.17 trillion by 2032, with a robust compound annual growth rate of 6.7%. The annual Hajj pilgrimage is a major economic event for Saudi Arabia, generating substantial revenues and driving significant expenditures during the pilgrimage season. In 2025, over 1.8 million pilgrims are expected to perform Hajj, with the General Authority for Statistics, GASTAT, reporting 1,833,164 pilgrims in the previous 2024 season, including 1,611,310 international visitors and 221,854 domestic pilgrims. Hajj and Umrah together generate approximately $12 billion annually for Saudi Arabia, reflecting recent actual revenues based on current pilgrim numbers and spending patterns. They also contribute about 5% to the kingdom's GDP as of 2025, up from 3% in 2019. However, market forecasts project that Saudi Arabia's revenue from Hajj tourism alone could reach around $150 billion in 2025, factoring in the kingdom's expansion plans under Vision 2030. Individual pilgrim expenditures vary widely, ranging from $3,000 to over $20,000 per person, depending on the package and origin, with accommodation accounting for roughly 40% of total spending. The Saudi government invests heavily in infrastructure and services to support this influx, including expanding hotel capacity, upgrading transport networks, and enhancing health and safety measures, with total public spending in 2025 projected at about 1.29 trillion Saudi riyals, part of which supports pilgrimage-related infrastructure and services. This investment reinforces the pilgrimage's role as a critical economic engine aligned with Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 economic diversification goals.
And he's safe with that report there on the Hajj, and wishing you a very happy Eid if you are celebrating this weekend. Now, the International Energy Agency has reported a surge in clean energy spending is expected to drive a record $3.3 trillion in global energy investment in 2025, despite economic uncertainty and geopolitical tensions. The IEA revealed that clean energy technologies, including renewables, nuclear and energy storage, are set to attract $2.2 trillion in investment, twice the amount expected for fossil fuels. It added that solar power is expected to be the biggest beneficiary, with investment forecast reach $450 billion in 2025, while spending on battery storage is predicted to surge to around $66 billion. The IEA, however, warned that investment in grids of $400 billion per year is lower than spending on generation and electrification, which could pose a risk to electricity security. Well, that's almost all we have time for. Let's recap tonight's main economic headlines. The European Central Bank cuts interest rates for the 8th time in a year to 2%. Canada's trade deficit in April widens to an all-time high of a whopping $7.1 billion Canadian dollars. And as you were just hearing, the International Energy Agency reports a surge in global energy investment to $3.3 trillion in 2025. And that's this evening's Economic Bulletin. Don't forget you can follow Q News on our social media platforms at Qnews EGY. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.